Well, Ark here, and today I'm going to be briefly discussing the changes coming to Death Knight in the War Within Alpha. This is the Alpha, so some things are going to change, but this video is mainly for the people with curious ears and eyes who just want to see what they have cooking up. If you watched my previous video about DKs on the Alpha, essentially what Blizzard wants to do, or the DK developers want to do, is decrease the influx of resources and more than likely make your abilities do more damage, especially with like runic power and rune spending and like other resources like a bone shield for blood decays, runic corruption for unholy, and then rhyme for frost. Some might not consider frost or rhyme as a resource, but it prevents you from spitting a rune on Holy Blast, right? So it is kind of has a lot to do with resource generation, but that's besides the point. That's going to be more relevant to when we talk about Ambom Limb. There are Ambom Limb changes coming. Okay, let's talk about the new talents that they have coming to the main DK tree. This is going to be this tree. Subduing grass. When you pull an enemy, the damage they deal to you is reduced by 4% for 6 seconds. Located at Rune Mastery's previous location, right? So this is Rune Mastery, right? It used to be right here, right before Ambom Limb. They moved it. Subduing grass is right before Ambom Limb. So I'm guessing whenever Ambom Limb pulls something in, God, I'm saying that so much. Pull something in, like since it's like a mass grip, it kind of gives everything like a 4% damage reduction. I also wonder if this works for Gorfiend's Grasp, but you're probably going to have to take the rune anyways, because Ambom Limb is such a core feature to the DK kit. Osmosis, anti-magic shell, increases healing received by 15 to 25%, located at Holy Bond's previous location. This is alright. I don't really see... DKs don't really need defensives, but we'll talk about this here in a second. New talent, Null Magic. Magic damage taken is reduced by 15%. Insane. And then the duration of harmful effects against you are reduced by 35%. New capstone, right? This is where it's at, right here at the bottom, next to Vestigial Shell. That sounds like a disease. Vestigial Shell. Casting an anti-magic shell grants 2 nearby allies a lesser magic shell that has, some form of scaling that absorbs magic damage and reduces the duration of harmful effects against them. Magic effects, I mean. I just said harmful magic effects. I have to clarify that because it's actually important. Against them by 50%. You'll pretty much choose between which one you want. Why does it say on here it's only 10%? It says 15 on here. Maybe they already nerfed it. They're on that shit already. They nerfed it. It's like, okay, 15 is crazy. So they just said, fuck it, just give them 10. But even the 10 is still really good. Yeah. I'm not sure about adding a bunch of new defensives to a class that is known for having good defensive. And don't worry, they didn't get rid of Soul Reaper for those people who like it. It's right here towards the beginning or closer to the tree. Another thing I noticed is that they still have Death Strike and Mind Freeze as talent nodes. I don't know why they aren't just, completely getting rid of all the annoying non-baseline things. As we'll be talking about later in the Unholy tree, they have added more things as baseline for them. In the next expansion, you might actually be able to pick up Asphyxiate, but in reality, only PvPers really care about that talent. It'd be cool to have a single target stun though in Mythic Plus. But yeah, I remember having that talent back in Mob. I think that's when they added it, right? Mob or WAD? Probably Mob, because that's when they gave everyone a bunch of stuns. New talent, Rune Protection. Your chance to be critically struck is reduced by 3%, and your armor is increased by 3 to 6%. Replaces Icy Talon's old position within the tree. Icy Talon used to be right here, so Runic Protection. This is going to be good for tanks, completely useless for the DPS spec. Chains of Ice is now granted baseline. Okay, As I said, they added more things baseline. Anti-magic shell is now baselined. Level 14 is when you learn it. Rune of Stone Skin Gargoyle can now be rune forged on a one-handed weapon. So the increasing your stats by 5% could be pretty good. The armor part is kind of irrelevant, and it's going to be able to be used on one-handers now. So we'll see if we end up using this as the breath build, because they get rid of Rune of Hysteria. And the developer note is Rune of Hysteria was a problematic design, especially as it pertains to Breath of Sindragosa and the volatility of its uptime. Like 2-minute breaths are boring as hell. We felt that for all the overall health of the spec, it would be the best to remove Hysteria at this time to better enable us to meet our goals with the upcoming changes to Breath. They haven't released any notes what the specific changes to Breath are right now at this time, but maybe like the next coming weeks, we'll see some new information about that. But they're removing Rune of Hysteria and they're changing Stone Skin Gargoyle to a one-hander weapon. So I'm wondering if, I don't know, maybe they want us to go that instead. But you know, having the whole armor thing is pointless, even with like 6%, 5% armor. Is like, you're not a tank. You don't ever really get auto attacked. When you do get auto attacked, you're probably going to fucking die. Empowered Wound Weapon has been removed. Has been removed for Unholy and Blood. Frosty K, you can still get Empowered Wound Weapon in your tree. Hopefully they actually make it just baseline for Frosty Ks. Like, you know, whenever they hit a certain level, they just automatically get Empowered Wound Weapon instead of us having the talents into it. This will still be available for Frost and their Spec tree, of course, but both Blood and Unholy were often flooded with resources, and a big unnecessary contributor to this was Empowered Wound Weapon. To better dial in resources on Blood and Unholy, we feel it's best to keep Empowered Wound Weapon for Frost only, even though Frost also has a lot of resource flooding, even with Empowered Wound Weapon. Even if we didn't have Empowered Wound Weapon, we'd still probably have a little bit too much runic power during our pillar. Really, if they wanted us to like not spend not resource flood ourselves, just make our spenders better. Abomination Limb will no longer grant Bone Shield, Runic Corruption, Rhyme based on specialization. Now, a big change is the Cleaving Strikes. This is very controversial because the DKs hate Death and Decay. They, especially DPS DKs, hate standing in that shit. Blood DKs hate standing in that shit too, don't get me wrong. But for DPS DKs, it's something that we started to have to do. I think Unholy's always kind of had to do it, but I know Frost Death Knight, it was never really a thing. But Cleaving Strikes now also retains bonus effects for being within your Death and Decay for 4 seconds when leaving its area. So we all know, like, whenever you put your pull down, the tank moves the mobs away because there's like a big circle coming, or he has to kite them. This is actually going to feel really good. And I also wonder if you can double dip, because you know Death and Decay lasts longer than 4 seconds. So I'm wondering, like, okay, he moves the mobs out, and then you move out of your Death and Decay. You have 4 seconds. Okay, it's about to be up. Death and Decay is still on the ground. You can go over your Death and Decay and walk back out of your Death and Decay. You have 4 more seconds. I kind of wonder if that's how it'll work. And like, if you go into your Death and Decay at its very last like second, you'll like be able to extend it. But we'll see. We'll see how this goes. Because if that's true, it's going to be absolutely disgusting for Obliterate. And hopefully they also make Obliterate hit 1 more additional target. Because right now it's capped at like 3 targets, right? Icebound Forward 2's cooldown has been reduced by 60 seconds. It's 3 minutes right now baseline. You can talent into it right now to get 60 seconds off. So I'm guessing we're just going to cut that talent out of the tree and just make Icebound Forward 2 to 60-second flat cooldown, or 2-minute cooldown instead of a 3-minute cooldown. Veteran of the Third War now grants 20% stamina. You won't have to put 1 point into it now instead of having to put 2 points into it. Icy Talon now increases the attack speed per stack by 6%, was 3%. Those are 2 ranks, so they're just kind of like compressing how many talents, or I guess like cutting how many talent points you need to spend for some of this shit. Unholy Bond, which was the Rune of the Fallen Crusader enhancer, you know, increases the effectiveness of your Runeforge effects. We'll actually have to see how this plays out with Rune of Apocalypse and Rune of Stonestone Gargoyle. We'll have to see, because it might be better because of Unholy Bond. Assimilation now reduces the cooldown of anti-magic zone by 30 seconds, no longer increases runic power when absorbing damage. This was actually kind of like really good for Unholy during the Sakhareth fight, because you'd put that down and you'd be able to spam, like during the Glittering Search, you put down your AMZ, right, and just spam Death Coil over and over again, getting your gargoyles off CD, and then you'll AMS on top of it, and you're just getting a shit ton of runic power while you're spamming the shit out of Death Coil as much as you possibly can. Cooldown is reduced by 30, so now it's going to be a 1 minute 30. I don't know, it might be make DKs a bit stronger in raid, because the more often they can use this for mechanics and reducing the amount of damage you take in mechanics, the more often you'll be able to use it. So we'll just have to see. Suppression now grants an additional 6% damage reduction to area effects when you suffer a loss of control effects moved to gate 3. So right here, right before your pretty much your defensive areas, leech increased to 5%, moved to gate 3. Right before, where is it? Right here, right after assimilation. I don't think we'll really ever need to take that. Blood Draw now also grants a buff, reducing damage taken by 10%, reduces the cost of Death Strike by 10 for 8 seconds when falling below 30% health. So did they remove the previous effect, or still okay, it still has the previous effect. It sucks blood. Drains blood from nearby enemies when you drop below 30%, so it's still a failsafe. Just a 10% DR, so they're pretty much making us tankier, which is not something we really needed. And if anything, the community, not just the DK community but the WoW community, kind of wants us to stray away from these kind of abilities. Unholy Ground moved to gate 1 after cleaving strikes. Sacrificial Pact is now a choice node with a feeable. We never really took this at the entire expansion. Runic Attunement moved to gate 1. Soul Reaper moved to 2. And the following talents have been removed. Might of Therazane, Dear God, we're going to move on. Not talking about the Unholy Tree. We're going to be discussing talents that have been removed first. Army of the Damned is being removed, which was the one that reduced Apocalypse cooldown by 45 seconds, and whenever you press Epidemic or Death Coil, the cooldown of Army of the Dead gets reduced by 5 seconds, which is this. So, which is your 8-minute zombie pop, right? And then Unholy Command is the one that reduced Dark Transformation, which is a 1-minute cooldown, down to a 45-minute or 45-second cooldown. That lines up with your your Apocalypse, which is going to be reduced to 45, so 45, you know, the rotation. Alright, and the other two we'll talk about later. But going into new talents first, Doom Bidding, consuming sudden doom, calls upon a Mages of the Dead to assist you for 8 seconds. Now a choice node with Summon Gargoyle. Alright, that's going to be right here, pretty much at the end of the tree. So depending on whichever one does better damage in single target is the one you're going to be choosing, and how often you can get sudden doom procs, which has changed, and we'll talk about it here in a second. The changes are down here. New talent, Raise Abomination, summons an abomination to attack a nearby enemy, applying festering wounds with its melee attacks and afflicting all nearby enemies with the variant plague. 90-second cooldown, replaces Army of the Dead, right? It says it replaces Army of the Dead, but I think it means Army of the Damned. So hopefully it doesn't replace Army of the Dead, because that'd be, if you had to choose between this and Army, that fucked me up, honestly. Hopefully it is after Army of the Dead, and this is just a typo, the Blizzard typo, just like Unholy Blonde, and it was talking about, you know, the DK tree. You know, get your fucking Taylor Swift albums and your Stanleys ready, right? It's like, no, this is just typos, right? New talent. Foul infections. Your diseases deal 10% increased damage and 5% chance to critically strike. Why did I say that so weird? Diseases. Your diseases. Right? They deal 10% more damage, have a 5% chance to critically strike. So crit, you're going to gain more value from crit, which you already have a lot of value from crit as Unholy. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the stat split's like 70% mastery, 30 to 40% haste, and you'd want at least 20 to 30% crit, which is a decent amount of crit. A new talent, Menacing Mages. Your Mages of the Dead Shadow Bolt now fires a volley. This is pretty much your 2 set. This is a really good talent, really good change. You'll get some extra cleave out of your mages. This is going to make pressing Apocalypse and Dark Transformation and AoE feel a lot better. Depending on where they put this talent is going to affect how you play or affect how good it's going to be. So hopefully it's not like too far down in the tree. Epidemic is now baseline. Outbreak is now baseline. Sudden Doom is now learned in Gate 1 directly after Scourge Strike, which is this ability. Also causes your next Death Coil or Epidemic to critically strike, right? So I think this is kind of what it does now. It doesn't say it makes it free. Okay, no, it's still free. Alright. Okay, it still makes it free because I'm pretty sure these are directly loaded from the alpha. So if it says it has no cost, and then it has no cost. Sudden Doom is no longer RPPM proc and has instead been updated to have a 25% chance to on auto attacks to proc with a build and bet. Sudden Doom is no longer a RPPM proc and has instead been updated to have a 25% chance on auto attacks to proc with a built-in bad luck protection to provide a more consistent proc. So I guess like every 4 auto attacks, you auto attack every 3.6 seconds. You're pretty much guaranteed a proc, what, every 12, 13 seconds? I'm not a mathematician, guys. I do YouTube, for God's sakes. So yeah, the bad luck protection is going to be really good. Besides that, and this is going to really help with the doom bidding, right? You're going to be getting that mages every 8 seconds, and also Mages of the Dead is going to synergize very well with Menacing Mages, because it's still, your Mages of the Dead casts your Shadow Bolt. So in Mythic Pluses, this is definitely going to be a great optional talent, and may even benefit us with the Festering Wound build, which is going to be godlike, especially now that you have Raise Abomination that applies Festering Wounds with its melee's attack and has a Virulent Plague. I just said a bunch of information there, but hopefully all these new talents and talent changes are going to make the Festering Wound build, popping build, a bit better, especially in AoE. And then the rest of this are just, them making essentially more talents baseline, right? Like Army of the Dead, Unholy Command. Army of the Dead is now just going to be a 3-minute cooldown instead of it relying on Army of the Damned. Apocalypse cooldown is going to be 45 seconds instead of you having to spend 2 points into your tree to get it down to 45, which was obviously the most disinteresting thing they've ever done. Even, I'm pretty sure they reworked this spec going into Season 4. No, they didn't. They didn't rework it. They just moved the damage profile. But, besides the point, they could have done some of the stuff coming into Season 4. But we can't egg on them too hard because, the talents were new. It was a new system. It was a lot for the team to take on, a lot more than what people think. Just completely getting rid of all borrowed power and pretty much getting rid of all the baseline stuff and putting it onto a tree. Like, designing all that stuff is, I would imagine, pretty difficult. But Violent Contagion, we already knew about this one. They told us about this one being reduced in the last patch notes. Violent Contagion inflicts a disease upon your enemies, spreading festering wounds equal to the amount currently active on your target to 7 nearby enemies. So you could have like 6 on a target. You press Violent Contagion and like a 7-pack cleave pool. You know, you put down your death and decay, your cleaving strikes. It strikes up to 7 additional enemies. You just fucking go ham on those motherfuckers. Do a shit ton of bursting, a shit ton of popping. I guess I should have looked at this one because this one's more relevant than this, because this is the old tree and this is the new tree, right? And festering wounds now functions like iron fur. This, I think I had a comment predict that this was going to happen in one of my videos, that it was going to stack like iron fur, or I either read that in the Discord, one or the other. Allowing multiple instances to overlap. You know, this kind of takes the skill away from festering might, but it does add better consistency to the spec. And Ibn Fever is no longer a choice node with Bursting Swords and is available directly after Bursting Swords. Update to also have an effect. Ibn Fever is no longer. Ibn Fever is no longer a choice node and is right after Birthing Swords. Updated to also affect Frost Fever and Blood Plague if Super Strain is talented. My god. This is going to be so disgusting. And Unholy Blight moved to Gate 1. Where's that, like right here? I don't know what Gate 1 means. Is this Gate 1 or is... I don't want to question it, right? And then we already talked about the removed talents. Just theory crafted a bit, made a little quick shift tree for the Unholy. This is going to be for Mythic Plus or AoE centric, right? First is discuss left tree. It's pretty like standard. This is stuff we already kind of have, besides the stuff at the bottom and the supercision. But yeah, I'm still thinking Ambom Limb is the go-to. Maybe there are some instances where you want to go blood draw, but we'll have to see about that. See how well it does, because it is a 3-minute cooldown. I'm pretty sure it's 2-minute on live. Oh nope, it's 3 minutes as well, which isn't that long compared to other cheat deaths, but it's not as good as other cheat deaths. But yeah, I decided to opt to no magic because I think no magic overall will have more of a benefit depending on how the dungeons are in the next expansion, how much magic damage and how much pulsing magic damage there's going to be. And then Ambom Limb, a mass grip, one of the major selling points for bringing DKs. And then the DR is going to be pretty good. And then, you know, Rider of the Apocalypse tree. You guys probably already watched a bunch of videos about the Rider of the Apocalypse, so I'm not going to go into it in this video. I wish I made a video about it, but its relevancy is kind of, you know, washed away if I'd made a video about it now, you know, unless they change it, right? I might make a video on it when the expansion actually comes out. But moving on to the right tree, the Unholy tree. Festering Strikes, you know, stuff that should be baseline, but, you know, it is what it is. Dark Transformation should also be baseline. Sudden Doom, which has been changed, as we talked about earlier. Reaping being moved up is really good, in my opinion. I hate how it was like over here on the right by itself. Harbinger of Doom actually seems very broken, because it makes your auto attacks a 55% chance to make Sudden Doom proc, which is going to synergize very well with Doomed Bidding, which summons the Mages of the Dead, which synergizes with Menacing Mages. So the more Sudden Doom procs you get, the more Shadow Cleave you're going to get from the Mages of the Dead, or Shadow Bolt Cleave. So, on like imagine like a 4-person council fight, like what's that fight called? The Primal Council, right? You know how it's like 4 of them just stacking on top of each other? Imagine this shit. You're just summoning like a huge army of just mages. Of like these undead mages who are just spamming Shadow Bolt Volley. And I wonder how like often they cast Shadow Bolt Volley. I wonder if it's like 3-4 times per mages within 8 seconds. Like say if it has a 2-second cast time, right? But it being right here is fine. And I also wish they'd move Improved Death Coil down to Coil Devastation, right? Like swap them. Bring Pregblinger, because they changed how Super Strain works with Ebon Fever. You know, now Frost Fever and Blood Plague also get reduced to half. And obviously you want Army of the Dead, Raise Abomination, but the main side is going to be the left side of the Unholy tree, where you're going to have pretty much a Festering Wound build, where your main like idea or your main goal is to pop as much Festering Wounds as humanly as possible in like a 7 target cleave fight, right? You know, Violent Contagion spreading to 7 nearby targets. It's a 45-second cooldown, which synergizes very well with Dark Transformation and Apocalypse, of course. And then with the Death and Decay, you know, hit 7, make sure Scourge Strike hit 7 additional targets. You're gonna be popping wounds like they're fucking bottles, right? At like a spring break party. It's going to be nuts. It's going to be super fun. Spamming spamming Scourge Strike on a bunch of fucking innocent targets in the Hollow Fall, right? Like all the like questing, because we're not going to be realistically we're not going to be able to do Mythic Plus for like 2 weeks, but this build looks really fun. I'm actually kind of excited to test this build in the beta. Hopefully I get the beta. I got the Dragonflight beta when it was a thing. I'm probably not going to get the alpha because I'm not like, you know, big name streamer like, you know, Tally and like a Maximum is, right? But, you know, I could pray. Maybe one day I'll look at my thing and see War Within Alpha. But besides that, guys, I think most of the changes are really good. I just don't know why they're kind of going into making us tankier. I don't see a reason to make DKs tankier, because if you ask most like high-end players what's like a pro for Death Knights, is that they're tankier than all the other specs, kind of like how Warlocks is. Like, imagine if they gave Warlocks more defensives. It just, that's not what they want, right? And that's not what I want. But these are just like current changes, and if it's like we don't really lose much for them, besides obviously we lost Empowered Wound Weapon if you're Unholy or in Blood. I can imagine if you're a Blood DK, you'd be kind of mad about it. Unholy DKs should be mad too, because it was like the only button you had that was off GCD. But besides that, yeah, I think most of these changes are good. The Cleaving Strikes change is very good. I was hoping they'll, you know, take my idea, make Unholy Blight and Mimosa's Winter part of your Cleaving Strikes. You know, whenever they're up, you can cleave, make Unholy Blight a 20-second cooldown opposed to a 40-second cooldown. But yeah, besides that, guys, peace.